But anyways, let's play this clip and let's react to it a bit because I think it opens the door maybe for a little bit more nuanced conversation on the right. One, that maybe the difference between like a Shapiro who does look like an absolute tool as he usually does in these kind of things, and two, like the deficiency of even the Tucker Carlson one. The like, oh, Carlson is like aping the left, or it's like people's like, oh, Tucker Carlson's speaking the truth on this kind of thing, and like,
Right.
let's talk about what he's actually prescribing here.
Yeah, you're great on
If you wake up one morning and you find yourself in a society where 23-year-olds with 4-year college degrees and like initiative who aren't smoking weed every day, if they can't make enough to buy a car, much less a home, much less get married, much less have children, then why should you be surprised when half of them say they prefer socialism?
Well,
you should not be surprised.
I agree to a certain extent. I think that the question is when the pedal hits the metal. Like you talk in the book.
Can we just stop at that for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I hear Tucker say that, I think, and knowing what I know about how these guys feel about higher education, they go back to that Reagan staffer who was like, we can't create an educated proletariat. We need to pull the funding out of this stuff. Like, is the problem that people don't have enough to sustain themselves in those lifestyles, or is it that we're educating too many people to expecting
we're educating too many people who are supposed to be like the grease on the wheel, right? You know?
Exactly. Yep.
But I will say this, I don't know, I'm not trying to just pick fights with people, but this is something that the left needs to get a lot better at too, is the family stuff, right? And you see this on the left. Look, I don't have kids or anything like that, but you see this kind of like anger at like the idea. Having a family is something that's really difficult to do, and that's bad. Like that's bad for people who want to have families. It's not saying that your social role or you're like determined or you have to do that, but having that not be an option, like actually is creating an unnatural dynamic in the sense of like it's like human like biological nature to like continue to have kids, right? That's just like part of being around. Not saying you have to do it, but like that's just something that like a society should be able to create an environment where people feel comfortable bringing children into the world.
Yeah, you should have the option.
It's very clear that we don't anymore. And what is, and it's going to be interesting to see how much they lean into it. You do see Vance, you do see Hallie, you do see Carlson making a lot of hay, and again, that's an issue that we should be able to own, right? Like I love the Matt Brunegg family fun pack. I don't know if you've read through it, but like real serious plans to take care of young families in this country, because like look, it is true. If you want to have a ticket of like, if you're sort of getting by right now and if you want to like go into poverty, right, like have a kid, because like that like immediately creates a whole host of issues and financial obligations that most working people cannot afford. And you look at poverty in this country, and a lot of it is tied to child rearing, and taking care of children, because we have completely decimated the ability as a society to sort of care for children. People have to pay for astronomical prices for things like daycare and things like that, right? Food, etc., right? All these things. Diapers are expensive, right? Again, that's an issue that we have to be owning. So it's like, yeah, the right's using this cynically, but I do see like some of the allergies that you see from people on the left from being able to say like, oh yeah, we are like the movement that's saying we want to support young families in this country, right? I'm not saying all, but I'm just saying you see it, and maybe it's more of an online phenomenon than like a really existing thing. But that's another thing. Like if you recognize, for example, that it's bad that Trump and all these people can get easy points on East Palestine, right? You should also recognize that it's bad that Howley, Vance, Tucker, all these people can do that when it comes to kids.
Yeah, I mean, especially because they are most like, what takes people away from their family?
Yeah,
it's a fucking job.
What I'm saying is like I don't have like any problems with saying that like socialism is like pro family in the sense of like socialism is like pro children and like wants children to be taken care of, and like I think that's like a core value actually of like being a socialist, and it's something that
I mean back to Engels.
Yeah,
I mean it's infantile that people, it's like sort of infantile iconoclasm that's like, oh, families are bad because conservatives said they're good or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
technology and how it's shifting and taking away jobs from folks. And you make specific reference to truck driving and the fact that there are going to be these automated cars on the roads. So would you, Tucker Carlson, be in favor of restrictions on the ability of trucking companies to use this sort of technology specifically to, sort of artificially maintain the number of jobs that are available in the trucking industry?
Are you joking? In a second. In a second. In other words, if I were president, when I say to DOT, to Department of Transportation, we're not letting driverless trucks on the road, period. Why? Really simple. Driving for a living is the single most common job for high school educated men in this country, in all 50 states. By the way, that's the same group whose wages have gone down by 11% over the past 30 years. The social cost of eliminating their jobs in a 10-year span, 5-year span, 30-year span is so high that it's not sustainable. So the greater good is protecting your citizens from, look, capitalism is the best economic system I can think of, I think that anyone's ever thought of, but that doesn't mean that it's a religion and everything about it is good.
No, but
there's no Nicene Creed of capitalism that I have to buy into. What I care about is living in a country where, decent people can live happy lives, actually. And so, no, I would say immediately, no, are you joking? And I maybe would make up some pretext for public consumption, like, oh, they're dangerous. The technology is not quite finessed. No. But the truth would be, I don't want to put 10 million men out of work because you're going to have 10 million dead families, and the cascading effect from that will wreck your country.
Okay, so there's a few things in there. Let's maybe start at the top, right? Which is this something that I think you and I like to talk about on this program, which is like the technology fetish, right? So because I think after we do this, we can just deal with the thought experiment as they want to portray it. But look, I think it's really important though to recognize that the whole automation is taking people's jobs is wrong. We should really get Aaron Beninoff on the program. I can't tell you all enough. If you want, people love when we suggest books. Let me get it right. Aaron Beninoff wrote a book. This is was back in 2019 on work and automation, called the Automation and the Future of Work. And I think it's a really great book because it really looks at work globally and work in capitalism and looks at automation. And it makes a point that we make a lot on this program. It's a lot of these things is let's utilize technology to sort of obscure the actually really existing social relations, right? So you see that McDonald's is a classic example. Oh, you've gone and you've done the touch screens, or you've been to a Walmart and you've had to do the self-checkout, whatever, right? Those actually aren't replacing jobs in the way that you think, because to actually run those systems requires people to be monitoring and managing those systems. Very famously, all automated McDonald's opened up recently. And it's not automated. The only thing that's automated is just the ordering program. You're utilizing that. They actually have people. The labor's obscured, right? The people are behind the wall there, not being replaced. And I bring this up, mainly to just say that all this technology discourse is always about obscuring labor and obscuring the very real decisions. You look at manufacturing in this country, the classic story, it's almost cartoonish at this point, is machines took away high skilled manufacturing jobs from the United States of America. No, these companies, because of advancements in technology, technology did play a role, were able to offshore more production into cheaper labor markets. That's what happened. So it was a decision by a capitalist to say, we're not going to manufacture in the United States. We're going to manufacture in a place that has less labor laws, that I can pay somebody, $1 for a day's work versus somebody 15, 20, 25 hours. $25 an hour to do this work. I can pay $1 a day for somebody to do this kind of labor, right? That was the decision versus technology has gone so advanced. Now these people became superfluous, right? So just always want to bring that up because I think it creates a lot of anxiety and sloppy thinking with people, that this kind of fixation that automation is the force that's been taking people's jobs away. No, it's capitalism. It's
that's he realizes he has to go say something about capitalism because he's stumbled onto one of the core problems of capitalism, which is that this stuff advances and who gets the benefit of it, not the actual workers. That's the real problem there. It's not the technology, it's the ownership structure.
But again, like, yeah, exactly. It's not the robots, it's the system, right? And like the
Yep.
thing is, like, the technology anxiety that people feel allows conservatives like Tucker Carlson, who want to keep the same system of exploitation in place, a really easy scapegoat, right? That it's like, oh,
Mhm.
it's the computers are so good, the technology, the machines, the robots, whatever, are so good, they're taking away people's jobs. Like, no, that's the fundamental logic of this system, right? They're always going to try to undercut labor, and that's what happened in deindustrialization in this country. It's what's happening again. Uber and Lyft, they didn't change transportation. They just moved things around so that you, as a driver, if you drive Uber, what happens? The company doesn't have to have fixed capital. What does that mean? It means like actually invest in like materials or in the things that are utilized to do the work. In that case, the car, right? You own the car. You deal with the depreciation on the value of that car. You deal with the costs of driving that car around and the maintenance and all that kind of stuff. They just moved the already existing like taxi industry onto your back, right? The costs that go with that. And everyone's like, oh, automation technology, blah, blah, blah. No, they just are shuffling around responsibility. And anyways, we had Dwayne on to talk about AI driving, which I think he might have said it more bluntly in his interview with Doug Henwood. He's like, I don't think we're going to see self-driving cars in like a real serious way anytime soon. But again, like the AI driven truck has been something that has sat and fixated the American imagination because like everything comes on a truck, right? That is like very important social labor. That's why those people were essential workers put on the front lines. And that's been something that you can't export away, which is why the trucking industry has like the wages and the livelihoods and the benefits of those people have faced severe cuts and austerity over the past 15, 20 years, right? Again, it's not the technology. The need for that is growing, in fact, but they're making that job worse and worse and worse. And it's not
Yeah.
because the AI cars, it's because the owners of those companies want to squeeze as much as possible. That's why right now, instead of paying drivers a fair, good wage for trucking, they're trying to lower the age that you can be a trucker, lower the requirements to get licensed so that they can get access to a cheaper labor source domestically in the United States, right? Again,
Mhm.
anyway, long set up to just say time and time again that this like technology fetish really obscures a lot of the realities. But let's just say for a second that the AI thing is happening and it's going to be here. This runs up again against one of the fundamental contradictions of capitalism. Something has come along that makes a job easier, right? That makes socially necessary labor easier for people. And instead of that benefit going to people, it goes to the few instead of to the many, and it creates a problem for the government to fix, right? In the example Carlson brings up, that we would ban a technology. So he's saying he thinks the technology is going to work, right? And it exists. I'll come up with an excuse and a lie to make people do make work jobs, basically, right?
Right.
Say we're gonna like not utilize technology that could alleviate people of doing certain kinds of labor and actually force them to do it in perpetuity, regardless of where the technology is, because I don't want to lose those kind of jobs, right? Look,
Yeah.
is it a more noble perspective than a just kind of like learn to code mentality, right? That you get sometimes? Sure. Right. I think that's fair enough. Right. Is it better to say like I will at least try to prevent mass unemployment than um I'll try to prevent mass employment? Fine. But you see the limit of even the like this turn that people are always talking about. The right is making a turn to being a more pro worker you know, right, is really hollow compared to like a socialist or even like a Bernie Sanders kind of program, right? Another, I think, more pressing and real example would be if we stop utilizing fossil fuels, what are we going to do with all the workers? I think it's a very valid question. I think there's a lot of people on the left who ignore that question. And I
Mhm.
think it's a really shameful aspect of the state of the American left right now that they are regularly coming up against the IBEW. They are regularly coming up against union laborers, right? When it comes to these transitions, not good.
Yeah.
Really bad position to be taking on these things. What was the Bernie Sanders solution? Just transition, right? You guys have skills and abilities, and we're going to utilize those for social benefit. We're going to compensate you for your labor, high wage, union jobs, etc. Right? a much better vision of the future than what the right is saying. Is that basically, we're going to maintain $20, $25 an hour jobs, and those are better than a $15 an hour job. But you look at how expensive it is to live in this country, right? We need way more for everybody across the board, right? But we're just going to maintain a kind of baseline wage system for people. We're going to maintain certain kinds of labor that, in Tucker's imagining, is going to be obsolete with technology forever, because we want to always sort of have a cog class in the system, right? It's not utopian. It's not even it's a very limited view of society, like dropping all of the other stuff attached with Carlson, just saying that like this kind of new pro worker right is not really that liberatory in any kind of sense of the imagination.
No, and that's if you decided it was sincere. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.